So today we're going to talk about the issue of executive functioning skills in your lives. Lynn has asked if I could give a quick definition of executive functioning skills, and I think that's a great way to start off. So I'm going to do that. So executive functioning skills are the directive capacities of our brain. And what I mean by that is that they connect, they prioritize, they organize our thoughts, our feelings, and our behaviors from moment to moment. The brain develops from the back of the brain here, which is the physiological brain, to the front. And so we have the physiological brain, the reptilian brain, then we have the mammalian brain, the emotional brain here. This is a seat of memory, language. It's where the amygdala is for the limbic system. And then right here we have the human brain, also known as the thinking brain. And this part of our brain, the prefrontal cortex, is considered to be the seat of executive functioning. Now, you're not going to do brain surgery and find, oh, here's where my organization lobe is, but this part of the brain integrates our thoughts and our feelings from moment to moment, as I just said. And it's important that we understand that this part of the brain is the last part of the brain to develop. And it usually coalesces in neurotypical brains around age 25, and in brains with ADHD around up to 3 years later, around age 28. There are pathways throughout the brain where this frontal lobe sends messages, and usually these pathways are modulated through dopamine and norepinephrine, which is why people with ADHD struggle so much with executive functioning skills. Now, there are about 11 executive functioning skills, anything from emotional control, impulse control, organization, prioritizing, shift flexibility, sustained attention, planning as well, initiation, and of course the last executive functioning skill to coalesce is what's known as metacognitive awareness, which is a pretty big clinical term. I like to call it self-evaluation. It's really self-awareness. It has to do with our judgment, our decision making. How are we attuned to the impact that we're making on other people? How attuned are we to the type of learner we are? What kind of worker we are? And this is the last skill to coalesce around age 28 in ADHD brains. Now, everybody has executive functioning strengths and challenges. So for those people who are neurotypical, they may have one or two challenge areas, maybe three. I myself do not have ADHD as far as I know, but I'm challenged with emotional control. I come from a long line of neurotic Jewish women, and we all are very emotional. I'm also not great sometimes with my time management. I always think I can do more in a given amount of time than I actually can do, so I underestimate how long things take. But the rest of my non-executive functioning skills are pretty well intact. For people who live with ADHD, it's often the reverse. You have a few executive functioning skills that are strong, particularly kids have a few, and then they need a lot of scaffolding and support for the other skills that are weaker. And for everybody with ADHD has executive functioning challenges, more challenges than strengths, so to speak, and also they have challenges that are more than just mild. They're often severe or moderate. And so these challenges cause them difficulties in many aspects of their lives. So Tony, I see that there are a lot of questions. Eva, you're from Hungary. Somebody's from Jamaica. Oh my God. Please send me some callaloo immediately. I love that. So I hope that that's a pretty clear explanation of what executive functioning skills are. And I think it's really important for us to understand that everybody has strengths and challenges. So whatever negative things you're telling yourself about yourself because you struggle with organization, or you struggle with time management, or you lose your temper, we all have our challenges. Okay, and the question is, how do we learn the skills to help us manage our challenges? Now, medication can help with a lot of executive functioning skills in terms of making us more available to learn the skills, to learn tools for those skills, to metabolize those, as I like to say. But medication, and in some cases, medication will assist with unconscious executive functioning skills, because executive functioning skills can be divided into two categories. We have hot skills, things we're conscious of, emotional or impulse control, organization, planning, prioritizing, initiation, and then we have are some of those, and then we have cool skills, which are much more unconscious: shift, flexibility, how do we transition from one thing to another, sustained attention, what is distracting me, am I distracted, I don't really realize I've drifted off until I come back, goal-directed persistence, and of course metacognition. So these are things that we need to we can pay attention to. The unconscious skills, it takes a little more effort to build those up, and the conscious skills often respond really well to direct instruction. And I forgot to say that time management is a conscious skill, a hot skill. Now, what I would like to do today, because we have a great opportunity here to ask questions about improving executive functioning skills for you and or for your kids. So I already see that we have some questions in the chat box, and I'm going to go right to those. And then if we have a little lag, I'll go to some of the things that people submitted in advance. Brianna Hawkins. Hi, Brianna. What are some suggestions to help my 7-year-old daughter keep track of small things as we work on responsibilities for her? Examples would be keeping her mask and glasses with her backpack and keeping her shoes close as well for morning routines. So we want to remember that the ADHD brain matures more slowly. And so in this area, your 7-year-old may actually be more like a 4-year-old. So what I would encourage you to do is to pick 1 or 2 things that you would really like to zero in on. One of the challenges with parenting kids with ADHD is there are a number of areas where they need support, and it can be overwhelming for you and it can be overwhelming for them. So we want to focus on goals that are within reach. So it's probably within reach to keep her glasses and her mask near her backpack, or her shoes all in area. So to have a launch area, then you can call it that and you can put things in that area, or to have a box or a crate where everything goes for the next day. You may want to have a clean up the house time. I call that an evening sweep. Everyone takes 5 minutes and picks up their stuff, and that way you can be available to supervise her if she needs that. It's hard for kids to keep track of things, particularly young children with ADHD, and so we want to create is a space for everything. Everything has its own place. So where does the stuff for school tomorrow go? Where do the dirty clothes go? And she may not put them in these places, and she may need direction from you to put them there, but at least she'll know where they go. And over time, she'll develop a habit for that. Now, of course, I did not do my introduction because I was so excited to meet all of you. So I'm going to do my formal introduction, which is welcome to the series of Facebook Live advice sessions hosted by AttitudeMag.com. This is part of Attitude's ongoing efforts to support readers during the pandemic and beyond. For more resources, please visit AttitudeMag.com. Today's session will last about 45 minutes, and I invite you to submit your questions in the comment field, and I'll aim to answer as many as I can. Please follow me on Facebook as well at Dr. Sharon Saline, and go to my website, www.drsharonsaline.com, for many free resources that you can download, as well as some things in the store that you might want to purchase, handouts or tips or even a class if you want to learn some more. So let's keep going. Rebecca says, is there I have rheumatoid arthritis, fibromyalgia. I've handled the medication, education, CBT, diet, lifestyle boundaries, home setup. I do, and meditation. I don't understand why I can handle of that, but I can't seem to make myself do my rehab exercise. I tried many methods and mindsets and still don't do it, even understanding it is necessary. How do I make myself exercise? Wow, Rebecca, it sounds like you've accomplished a lot. I hope you're patting yourself on the back because that's pretty amazing. Um, what I would encourage you to do is to start small. So a lot of times, so let's talk a little bit about the executive functioning skill of initiation, right? And initiation is linked to motivation, procrastination. There's a whole host of things that go along with being able to do something that's on our list. A lot of times people procrastinate because the task seems too big. They don't enjoy it. There's not enough dopamine to make them do it because it's the right thing to do when the task itself is so unpleasant. So what I would encourage you to do is to start with a small amount of exercise and set the timer. Set the timer for when it's going to begin. Allow yourself to do 3 minutes and you're done. Do 3 minutes and see how that goes at the same time every day if you can to get into a routine. Maybe the best time to do it is when you first get out of bed or after if you have children, you send them off to school or you get them settled in with their hybrid learning, online learning. So try to start really small. There's something about not wanting to do the exercise. Maybe it's unpleasant. Maybe it, really is a concrete example of having this problem that you do not want to have. So I would encourage you to make a time and start small. And when we break things down, that actually really helps with initiation and procrastination. People procrastinate because the task seems unmanageable. It's overwhelming. That's avoidance procrastination. People also procrastinate because they want to get it right. That's perfectionism procrastinating. And then we have productive procrastination, where you do other things and you get those done and you still avoid the main thing that you have to do, but you feel good because you're doing other stuff. Tony John asks, is there a list for these various executive functions or challenges? Yes, we have that below. Tony, how do I know if it's a challenge versus something else? So, I think if you're aware that you're challenged with your executive functioning skills, then it's probably a challenge. But you want to speak to your doctor because there might be some sort of biological reason for what you're experiencing. Sarah asks, can you help with teenage onset ADHD? Yes, I'm happy to do that. Could you make your question a little more specific, please? Chris, the biggest issue I find is doing things in order or doing things that are mentally challenging. It turns into anger because it seems too intense to deal with at the time. So so the thing is that one of the challenges that we have to do when we're dealing with how we're going to approach our tasks, particularly tasks we don't like, is thinking about the order in which we like to work. Some people really like to do the hard thing first, get it over with, then do something easy as a reward, and then maybe something medium after that. You get to decide which of your tasks is hard, which is easy, and which is medium. Only you can do that. Some people like to start with something easy. I'm going to check my email and give myself 30 minutes, and when the timer goes off, that's it for email. I'm going to actually move on to what I need to do. But I don't want to be bogged down or worried all day that I haven't checked my email. So, of course you're going to get angry because it's challenging for you. So the second thing is the first thing is picking the order. But the second thing is how long can you work before your mind starts to drift? How long can you work before you're frustrated and tired? So what we want to do is we want to help you set up a schedule for working that caters to that time limit. So if you're really working on something that's mentally challenging, maybe you can only concentrate on it for 20 minutes. That's cool. Set your timer for 20 minutes. When it goes off, make yourself get up, go to the bathroom, get a drink of water, maybe leave a post-it on your screen of what you're working on, or write on your computer if you're writing, here's what I'm thinking about, so that when you come back, you know what your entry point is. That's a big problem for a lot of people with ADHD. They stop working, they take their break, and then they come back, and it takes them another 15 minutes to get back to what they were doing. So decide for yourself how long you can work. Maybe you can do 3 20-minute blocks if you're an adult, with 5 minutes of a break at each one, and then a longer break at an hour. This is something that you want to do with your kids as well, whether they're 9 or whether they're 17. How long can they work? What order do they want to work at? How can we set a break? What are acceptable activities for short breaks, and what's a longer break? That way we're incentivizing our kids. And here's an example of what I mean. So after dinner, after I've cooked dinner, I don't really particularly want to do the dishes. I want to sit and talk to a friend, or maybe watch some TV. But I know that if I do those things, it's going to be harder for me to do the dishes afterwards, because I'll be more tired. And also, who wants to do the dishes at 10 o'clock at night? I don't. So I make myself do the dishes first, which is really hard. So I have to put on super good music to dance around the kitchen and sing while I'm doing the dishes. And then I reward myself with my TV show. Why? Because I've learned that over time. We use extrinsic motivation, the external reward is I'm going to watch TV, until the intrinsic motivation, I feel good about doing the dishes because my kitchen is clean and that was a goal that I set for myself, kicks in. And the reason I'm saying kicks in is because it's harder for people with ADHD to rely on intrinsic motivation, number one. And number two, where kids are concerned, it doesn't actually kick in until the late teens, early 20s in neurotypical brains. So now we're talking about their early 20s to the mid 20s. Sharon, I'm finding the DSM symptoms do confuse a lot of people. What is the plan for updating? It seems to focus on younger students. I agree, and this has been a big problem with the DSM, is that it's geared toward children and teens and less toward adults, which is why in the DSM-5 you need to have 6 symptoms in 2 or more settings if you're under the age of 17, and 5 symptoms in 2 or more settings if you're over the age of 17. I don't know when the next DSM is coming out, but I'll be sure to tell you. Lawrence, my son is 23 with ADHD. My biggest challenge with him is denial, his difficulty to connect cause and effect, or taking responsibility for his own screw-ups. So this is a really good comment, Lawrence. Thank you. Why is it that it's so hard for kids with ADHD to own up to their challenges? And my answer is really simple. It's shame. It's shame, flat and simple. And it's shame because inside they don't want to be making these mistakes. And if they deny it, then they can pretend that it's not there or they didn't do it. And there's a long history for many people who've grown up with ADHD of humiliation. Humiliation about why you're different, how you're different, the ways that you've missed things that other people are saying or doing, being reprimanded in school, having teachers hold your paper up as an example of what not to do. So yes, your son is going to be in denial, and he's going to struggle with cause and effect. One of the things that can help kids with this is asking questions, simple questions that build metacognitive awareness. What did you notice? What was that like for you? What are some of your conclusions, having done this now, that about how you might want to do it differently in the future? That's the best that you can do with a 23-year-old. You can ask open-minded questions, and you can let them know about your concern. You can also really work hard to let them know when they're not messing up. Dr. Barbara Fredrickson, and her colleagues at the University of Pennsylvania on the Happiness Project did a whole lot of research on positivity. And what they found is that the ideal positive ratio should be 3 positives for every negative. Take a minute right now And think about yourself if you have ADHD, or your kids if you have kids with ADHD. What is the ratio for them? For every one positive, how many negatives do you think they hear in a day, or do you think you hear in a day? I've traveled all over, and the range goes from one positive to 10 negatives, from to one positive to 30 negatives. When a teenager said, "What do you, Dr. Sharon, do you want to know what I say to myself or what other people say to me?" We have to counter that. And so when you have a 23-year-old whose primary response is denial and anger, it's because he doesn't see that he actually gets things right. We want to meet him where he is, to let him know that we see when he's making an effort, when he's making progress on something, giving him a high five, patting him on the back, saying, "Thanks for clearing your plate. I really appreciate it." Even though in your head you're thinking, "Why am I thanking my 23-year-old for clearing his plate? He should do that automatically." Because we're trying to reset the equation. Carolina asks, or maybe it's Carolina, I apologize. My son in fifth grade doesn't know how to take notes in class. He will write the problem but not the explanation. How can I help him? This happens for a lot of kids with ADHD. It's hard for them to show their work, and yet it's essential for them to show their work, because we can't check their work if we don't know how they're thinking or what's leading them to come up with this conclusion. What I would start with is for him to talk through how he is solving the problem. And if he cannot take notes in class, which you're saying he cannot, then he should receive notes from the teacher, or he could receive notes from another student. It's very difficult for kids with ADHD to listen and take notes at the same time. It's difficult. There's a lot of executive functioning skills that are required to do that. So ask for the support that he needs and he should get, which is either he should have a note taker or get notes from someone else so he can just pay attention. And then when you come home, maybe you could get a copy of those notes from the teacher emailed to you, or maybe someone can use, I know it sounds really old-fashioned, carbon paper, oh my God, or if they're taking notes by hand, or if it's on the computer, it's super easy to make a copy and send it to someone. Brooke, as a kid, I would have loved to have the home for certain items, glasses, be clearly labeled and used only for those items. Exactly. So it's like everyone needs their own cubby, right? Gloves and scarves go in this box, or this milk crate, or this cubby. You know, notebooks, school items go here. You know, have everything needs its place, and a label really helps. And this guides kids, so you can direct them. You know, go to your school crate and see what's there, or go to your gloves crate and find two that match so you can put them on today. That kind of a thing. Can be good for shoes as well as other clothing items. My daughter was on meds for ADHD, Marcia says, and school didn't notice any change, especially regarding grades. She's still working a year plus behind her peers. So my question to you, Marcia, is, were the meds the right meds? Did you tweak them a little bit? Did you see a difference in your kid? And is she getting adequate support? So could you write back to me, please? Thank you. Nadira, I work in a corporate environment. I know that my weak executive functioning skills hold me back from reaching my full potential. How do professionals develop executive functioning skills? This is a terrific question. So there are a number of ways for adults to build executive functioning skills. One is you could get an executive functioning coach. Two, you could tune into any of the Attitude webinars, which are tremendous. Three, you could get a workbook and work on it yourself. Four, you could listen to a variety of podcasts. I'm sure Attitude has links for podcasts for adults with ADHD. One of the things would be helpful, I think, and Peg Dawson and Richard Guare and their series of books, Smart But Scattered, and they have for kids and adults and teens, they're terrific. They have a questionnaire, and in that questionnaire you can rate your executive functioning skills. And when you've rated them, then you'll have a sense of what your strengths are and what your challenges are. And I would encourage you just to pick one challenge. How many things can people change at one time? In my opinion, one, maybe two. And so if you're trying to change a number of things about yourself at the same time, you're going to experience failure and disappointment and frustration and negative judgment. So pick one thing that you want to work on. Maybe it's time. In time is so responsive to direct instruction. Use alerts, use alarms, use notifications, use backwards design. If you don't know what that is, I'm happy to explain it to you. You start with the end goal, like I want to leave my house at 5:30 to make it to my mother's for dinner by 6. What do I need to do between now and 5:30? I have to pull my salad together. That's going to take 15 minutes. I need to get my kids to make sure my kids are dressed and clean. That's going to take 15 minutes. I want to finish my emails. That's going to take 15 minutes. That's 45 minutes. Plus I want to throw in 10 minutes for the extra. Who knows what's going to happen? That's almost an hour. That's how we do backwards design. And that's a critical thing for teaching that skill. Lynn Thomas, how does one get motivation back into life after losing control during the 4-year period where my son battled cancer, where people did meals, cleaning, etc.? So Lynn, I'm not sure if this is for you or for your son. So motivation is composed of a number of executive functioning skills. It's composed of initiation, time management, sustained attention, goal-directed persistence, and focus. And so when you've suffered cancer, when you've been struggling with cancer, or your son battled cancer for 4 years, and I don't know if he passed or if he's still with us, you know, your primary focus during this time was survival. And now you have open space to do other things. It's almost like you have to completely recalibrate your list. So what I might suggest is sitting down and writing down 5 things that really matter to you that you'd like to start doing. And then take the first thing and break it down in small chunks. If you still can't get started, the task is too big. Kevin, can you share any success stories of adults who improved with an ADHD coach? Yes, I have plenty of success stories. I mean, I think the challenge here is finding the coach that works right for you. There are also some therapists who are well versed in ADHD who are able to both and you know, I like to think of myself as one of them because I work, I do the sort of the mental health issues hand in hand with the executive functioning skills. I think that the adults who respond best to executive functioning coaches are those who have some specific goals, and they're willing to try different things, even if something doesn't work out, to try, recalibrate, and try again, kind of like your GPS. You're recalculating. Ashley, talked to you about a month ago starting my new job and did not have my BF support. I think you meant EF support. Wanted to let you know I discussed, oh, my BF support. Yes. Hi. Hi, Ashley. I remember you. Wanted you to let you know I discussed my feelings with him, and I've been getting up and going to work on time, and I'm thriving at my new job. Awesome. Of course, your thing just disappeared. I have no idea where it went. So I just want to say bravo. That's fantastic. Unfortunately, Facebook cut off your thing. I'm so excited, and please copy and paste that again because I didn't get to read it all. Brianna says we have coat hangers for backpacks and coats with shoes underneath. We'll try the sweep idea as well to see if that will help her. You're welcome. Thank you. You're welcome. Of course. My pleasure. Julie, how do you get an ADHD kid to create a habit, and does the reminder to pause and look at the surrounding and put things where they were or they belong ever pay off with them mastering the skill? Yes. I'm just going to say flat out yes. It takes time. And they might need a little extra help with the focus on what they're looking for. An example, check things off your to-do list when you're done so you know you've completed them. That can be a little more challenging for kids. It's not impossible, but we want to remember that it takes repetition to build a habit. And it takes really strong working memory and processing speed. And for many people with ADHD, kids in particular, their working memory or their processing speed in the cognitive testing in the WISC or the WACE is weaker. And so things don't transfer down the memory line as quickly as we would like. So take a deep breath and say to yourself, repeat, repeat, repeat. It will work out. And I assure you that your kids will learn this. In fact, I had a client, this is an amazing story. She was maybe 23 at this point, 22. And she said that the whole time she was growing up and living with her parents, her father used to say to her, turn around and look at where you've come from and what you've left behind, and use that so you can figure out what needs to get done. So look at the path, what's in your wake, essentially, right? And she found herself in her early 20s doing some babysitting. And she would say to kids when it was time to clean up, turn around and look at where you came from. And she came to therapy one day. She's like, oh my God, Dr. Sharon, I think I got it. It only took 13 years, but I got it. So remember, your kids will get it. Um, so, okay. Lynn, can you build a schedule so all the house stuff gets done so it finally becomes a routine in your world? Sure, but you build things slowly. A lot of times we expect too much of ourselves. We really can't change a lot. Build a schedule and then give yourself credit if you do some of it. You know, your goal is some of it, not maybe the whole thing. Sarah, let's see. You like Marie Kondo's one room at a time method? Yes, I like that too. I like the idea of one thing at a time. We're going to work on one thing at a time. And I think for people who struggle with organization and tidiness, one room at a time is absolutely the way to go. And find places to put stuff. I had someone who came in and she basically had a box. You know, her mail would come in through the chute and she'd leave it on the floor and she'd leave it on the floor and then she wouldn't take care of it. So I said to her, I want you to put all your mail in a box and come into to our next session with your mail. She came in with the mail and I said, oh, and by the way, could you please go to Staples and get yourself a filing box? And so she came in, she loves Staples. She came in, and or whatever, Office Depot or Office Supply store you like. So she came in, and then we made a tab. We made a folder for the different things: bills, letters from friends, you know, circulars, miscellaneous, magazines. So when the mail came, she just put the stuff there. That was her one goal. And then after about 3 months, she came in, she said, I'm ready now to work on the kitchen. Took a picture of the kitchen, and that's what we did next. Sarah, yes, you can. This will be recorded. It's recorded, so you can watch it later. Sam, my son, 19 years old, not on meds, has an inattentive ADHD tic, which leads to angry outbursts, makes things worse, and keeps him focusing on tasks. Online classes, reading, etc. become overwhelming for him. He tried many meds growing up, but side effects like hungry, dry mouth, sleepiness were not manageable for him. So, you know, kids who can't take medication really struggle, and that's true for adults. I wonder if, did your son try a non-stimulant? Because sometimes for kids who can't take stimulants, non-stimulants, whether it's Wellbutrin or 10X or guanfacine, or Strattera, can help with some of the processing and some of the challenges that kids have, as well as managing anger, anxiety. And the anger, it would seem to me, is coming from his, you know, frustration, you know, extreme frustration. Skill building would be really important to help your son with. So maybe sit down with him and ask him, you know, what's one thing about himself that, you know, he feels pretty good about, and what's one thing he would like to change. And then if he can't think of anything, you could suggest, I've observed that this is a struggle, or this is a struggle, and then maybe he could pick one of those things and you could work on them together. That would give him some sense of agency, and it would also sort of oh my God, I'm having a mental moment. It would narrow things down. There you go, to one area where he could start to build a sense of competence. You're welcome, Stephanie. Sylvia, after years of going to counseling and using medication, the workplace is still where I cannot succeed. I'm sorry. Panic attacks, memory loss, and social breakdowns. Does disability ever cover those? Like me? Yes. So I think it's a great idea to try to apply for disability. You'll need to have some diagnoses that would, be appropriate. I think it sounds like you have the criteria that would certainly qualify that: panic attack, memory loss, and your inability to work. I hope that you have a good counselor that can help you with this process. Good luck. Let's see. Is there a teen version of attitudes? Oh my goodness, it went away and I can't see it. You asked a question, is there a teen version of attitude? So that's a really good question, because actually Annie and I have been talking about doing some of these live sessions for teens. So stay posted, stay tuned, and we'll let you know when those live teen sessions are coming up. Oh, Jennifer wants to know what the DSM is. It's the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual for psychiatric and disorders, mental health disorders. Yes, a lot of shame. Shame came to mind. I'm 60, so you know the feeling. Thank you, Anne Marie. Shame was very helpful. Yes, we want to remember when we're approaching our kids, and the way we're approaching ourselves is, if you wouldn't say it to a third grader, would you say it to yourself? No, I don't think you should. And I think a lot of times we talk to ourselves in ways that we would never talk to a third grader. And sometimes we are so frustrated with our kids that we forget what it's like to walk a day in their shoes. They're struggling every day to show up. And so we want to meet them and let them know where we see them showing up and where we might like a little more effort. But it's important that we only pick one area where we want to see more effort so that they can get a sense of success. I wanted to say this earlier and I forgot. I like to think about change in a three-tier model. So the first tier is like the bottom shelf. You've got it, you can see it, you can reach everything there. Most of the time you're pretty cool. It's pretty good. The middle shelf, so there's a shelf at eye level, then there's a shelf that's slightly above eye level where you have to reach a little bit. You reach, but you can get it. It's within your reach. That's the second level. The third level is you're on your tiptoes. Oh, you can touch it, but you can't actually do anything. You can't get the chocolate down from that high shelf. So what we want to do is we want to focus on teaching skills in that eye level, that second middle area where it's within reach, because then we can experience success for ourselves and we can help our kids experience success. We want to work on that until that eye level shelf moves down to the lower shelf, and then we can move something from that tippy top shelf. We'll drag a chair, we'll grab it, and we'll put that in the eye level shelf, which is, within our reach, and work on that. Rebecca says, thank you for answering my question. I don't like the exercises and they're boring. Well, that's why you don't like it. And you also hate being hot and sweaty. So here's what I would suggest. Break it down, small steps. If you can't start, it's still too big. And maybe the idea is to do your exercise before you take a shower, so you're not sweaty and uncomfortable for too long. Marcia, thank you so much for saying that. Cleaning a house is not so fun. And if it's not easy for you, then I hope that you live with people who can help you. And what I would encourage you to do is to come up with a chore wheel or a list and have family chore time every day for 15 minutes where everyone does a little teeny bit of cleaning. Or if you want, you can make it one day on Saturday. But this way, you're not alone doing it, and they're not alone. And everybody's, kind of in the groove together. You can supervise your kids. Your kids might help you along. Personally, I recommend put on the music and have fun, and then maybe do something fun together as a reward. It's important when you're trying to clean your house that you set simple goals for each room, rather than trying to make it all look like Martha Stewart lived there. Veronica, any suggestions for how to help elementary-aged kids learn boundaries? For example, you need to leave your sister's room when she asks you to, or don't go looking for where she hides her money. I'm laughing only because this is a common question. It's a situation that I've dealt with many times. So one of the reasons that it's hard for kids with boundaries has to do with that impulse control. They want to go in their room, they go in the room. They want to see where the money is, they look at that. So what we want to do is to try to shift, not just we want to shift not just from the behavioral intervention, but in this case, how do they feel? How do they imagine their sister feels? We want to try to increase their empathy bandwidth, because if they could have a bigger empathy bandwidth, they might have an easier job be restraining themselves. So do they, how would they may feel fine if their sister came in their room whenever they wanted. But part of the thing that we want to help them understand is, well, how would you feel if your sister came in your room and took your favorite pair of socks and you wanted to wear them? You probably wouldn't be super happy. So what are some ways that are acceptable for one child to go into another room? Knocking, and I would just start on that. Knocking. I would encourage the older daughter, I assume, who's hiding the money, give the money to you, put it in a lockbox, and it's off limits, because your younger child cannot restrain themselves. And instead of being mad at them because they can't restrain themselves, let's accept this as it is, and let's work on the boundary of what it means to leave a room, to knock before you go in, how to enter a room. One of my clients goes in and is singing at the top of their lungs, and the parents are in the room in a conversation. It's very discombobulating. And so what I try to encourage them, to do is to say, let's do a takeover, a do-over, take back or a do-over, so that you can say, okay, hey, you know what? Glad to see you, glad you're happy, but that was really loud. Could you just turn around and and have a do-over and come back in, understanding that we're here, we're talking. So we give kids a chance to make a reparation, and that's important. So if one child doesn't leave the others when asked, then instead of screaming, the older child, the sister, should come and say, hey mom, this would be a good time for you to help me ask so-and-so to leave. I know that's very labor intensive, but we're trying to teach something, and yelling is usually not what happens. So the sister could say, I'd like you to leave my room. I will hang out with you at such and such a time. I also have a client situation like this with a younger sister who's in second grade and a brother who's in eighth grade, and all the sister wants to do is play with the brother, and the brother's 14. He wants some alone time. And so what we agreed on is that every day there would be a half hour where the brother would just play with the sister, whatever the sister wanted to do, and that the sister would know that that was their special play time, and that's when they would hang out. Usually younger siblings just want to be with the older sibling. They want attention, and particularly now, because kids can't be with their friends. Their siblings are can be their social lives. Nora, my boyfriend is the only one in my family that doesn't have ADHD. I know he is frustrated with us, but he doesn't want to understand ADHD. He thinks it's an excuse. Any help for me on this? Yes. So for people like this, I think it's important for you to, obviously direct them to some fact-based sites like Attitude, where they can get some information, read an article or two, and open their minds. There's also books for couples who live with ADHD, and I would encourage you to check those out. And if he doesn't want to read something, maybe he could listen to a podcast. The goal is to get him more informed, not to change his mind, because the only thing that will help him is information. Andy says, next week I have a 504 meeting for my senior. I feel like none of the accommodations help or support her. I'm so sorry about that. If that's the case, then I would ask your senior to attend the meeting, and I would talk about what kinds of accommodations would support her. A very frank conversation about what would be more helpful. And I think it's important that she attends, because we want her input and she may not need to stay for the whole time, but we want to hear what isn't working for her so that you can create what is. You're welcome, Lawrence. Um, Jennifer, I need an appointment, the app that will sound an alarm every time I need to go to an appointment or remember to take something. Does anyone know? Okay, so you can set your phone to do that. Um, because most phones have sounds that you can attach, and you can attach different sounds to different appointments. Sylvia, childhood of severe mental and emotional abuse makes my ADD amplified. At home, I have been able to create the organized home that helps me keep my HSP pretty calm, but at the job, I can't keep calm for longer than a few hours. So, Sylvia, I think you could absolutely qualify for disability because you have PTSD and some of the other things you listed, and you could work part-time, which would give you a sense of contributing and feeling engage with the world, but you don't have to struggle so much for a full-time job. Stephanie, my teen asked to go off meds due to adverse side effects after transferring to online school 3 years ago. The new school has lower class sizes and trained and compassionate teachers. Fantastic. She's thriving academically and gaining weight, changing the classroom delivery. That is so great. I'm so glad you shared that, Stephanie, because that's exactly what we need to remember, that kids learn differently. And if one situation is truly not working for them, what are some other options? Um, for a young man, is there an average age for him to get interested in ADHD and work on it? Nor, nor psychological help, not that I didn't try. You know, people come to wanting to change themselves at their own rate. You can lead the horse to water, but you can't make it drink. So I would encourage you to plant some seeds. Maybe, offer a list of support and they'll get to it when they're ready. That's the thing about young adults. You cannot make them do things. Um, Lynn, I'm so sorry for your loss. So I would encourage you to figure out one or two things that you can do that would help you connect with others and engage with the world. And while that's really hard to do right now during COVID, there are a lot of online activities and some COVID safe in-person activities as well. Um, Mary, how can I help my child who has social anxiety feel at ease during an evaluation for ADHD so the doctor gets a real look into who she is and get feedback? Well, I think the social anxiety will be part of what the doctor sees. You can obviously share with the doctor in advance that your child has some social anxiety. You can maybe meet with the doctor and your child so your child gets a sense of a familiarity of the office, maybe what activities, what it will be like, so that your child can come in prepared. Is it possible to retain information given the right study skills for children and adults? Does it take extra study time? Yes. Yes to both of those things, of course. Do EF challenges worsen with age? Well, as a matter of fact, I think they do. You know, we get more forgetful, particularly when women go through menopause. It's a lot for a lot of us. It's actually like having ADHD. So yes, it does. And Stephanie asks, do ADHD and ASD often go hand in hand? 14% of the time. If ADHD is the primary diagnosis, 14% of those kids have an ASD diagnosis. But if ASD is your primary diagnosis, about 50% of those kids have an ADHD diagnosis. And I will take one more question. Wow, we really went through this quickly. Visual aids are very helpful, Nora. Thanks for sharing. I think that's super important. Melissa, I am 39. I feel like I have adult ADHD. I know this may have been said, but I'm working, so I didn't hear. Okay, you can't stay on task. I go from room to room. Okay, so Melissa, what I would do is I would stay in one room. I would go through the house and go in a room and say, put post-it, a big post-it, get the big kind, and say, this is what I want to do in this room. And then go to another room and put it up in there. And then you can just work on like the first item in every room so you feel like maybe you're making a little progress, or you can just work on one room at a time. Nadira asks, how do you not get overwhelmed by all the alarms and sounds? My suggestion, Nadira, is that you have like two types of alarms. One, a sounds like, or maybe three. One for medical appointments, one for timed breaks at work, and one for when you need to pick up your kids from school or something like that. Ashley, thank you. I'm so glad you wrote back. I was concerned you wouldn't. He has begun telling me how proud, how more and more, how proud he is of me and has been a lot and much more supportive. I'm still working on me and taking it day by day. I am celebrating my accomplishments now more than ever. Even if I do it privately, I take 15 minutes daily to go over all my to-do lists, celebrate everything I've checked off, and everything I roll over for the next day is not bothering much. Attitude has truly been a game changer for me. Oh, Ashley, I just want to say, woohoo! All right, I'm doing my silly Sharon dance. Way to go. I am so happy for you, and I am so proud of you. And I think on that